CPI, inflation, labor market, and the American economy. Today we're going to dive deeper into some of the data, and I'm going to give you a little bit of my opinion on what is happening, also looking at other markets to finally tell you what I believe is the best move for you in the next couple of months, or at least what I am doing, how I am preparing myself for the situation. Let's start with CPI. CPI came out 2 days ago. Inflation is at 3.7%. A figure that is consistent with the last month. Core inflation, which is inflation minus energy, minus gas prices, and this kind of stuff that can fluctuate a little bit more, is at 4.1%. So we saw an improvement from August, 4.3%. Nothing big, but we saw an improvement somewhere. Did it beat expectations? For some it did, for some it didn't. We're still at twice where we should be compared to what the Federal Reserve wants. Let's dive deeper in subsectors. Number one, energy. Although energy is not part of core inflation, which is what the Fed looks at, energy has a lot of impact pretty much everywhere. If petrol is more expensive, gasoline is more expensive, transportation is more expensive, and since most of the stuff we buy is transported, everything could become more expensive. Prices of energy have seen a year-over-year decrease of 0.5%, so that's a positive trend for us. However, we saw a gigantic uptick in the past month. 2 months ago, they had fallen 3.6%. A month ago, they rised up by 1.5%. That's a big uptick. However, I have to say that personally, I noticed in the past week, they've been dropping again. Of course, we have an ongoing war. We have a second war coming in an area that could also affect the petrol prices on a smaller scale, but still can. So that's something we need to observe. There's no crystal ball to figure out what is happening. Turning our attention to food prices. Some of you might get really pissed about this one, some won't. I have to say that I agree with what I'm seeing, but let me know in the comments below what you're seeing. Food prices saw a 3.7 increase year over year compared to last year, past month. Slight improvement from what we saw in August, which was a 4.3% increase month, 4.3 increase year over year. So slight improvement. It means that inflation is decelerating. It is important to notice that this is from the CPI report. This does not go on a state-by-state level. It's simply on average. Let's dive deeper into some of the numbers. Eggs decreased by 14%. Makes sense because in December, because in the winter, autumn of last year, we had the whole chicken issue, which pumped up egg prices to prices I've never seen in my life. Milk down 1.2%. Not a slight change, not a big change. Fish is down 1.5%. Fruits and vegetables up 0.8%. Meat is up 2.9%. Bread is up 6.1%. And coffee is up 1.6%. So some are going up, some are going down. Depending on brand and stuff, you might see different numbers. If you are in California, I don't want to know. I know already it will be expensive. Don't let me get a heart attack, please. I'm okay. If you want to give me a heart attack, you can put it in the comments. Now let's move to the most important one, the one that everybody's waiting. Americans are broke. Americans want to buy a house, but nobody can because interest rates are 2.5 times higher than what we saw 2 years ago, and home prices still didn't move. It fascinates me how Jerome Powell, or at least how America thinks that the Federal Reserve can fix the housing issue. I believe that they cannot. This is not financial advice. This is my opinion. I believe that housing is not a financial issue. Housing is a policy issue. We're not building enough. We're not incentivizing for building. We're making building too difficult, even though we're in America and it's just a couple of sticks and drywall. It should be pretty quick to build. But policymakers don't want to pump in more. And on the other side, because of interest rates, builders are not building enough because they're scared, which is creating a big shortage in housing, even if fewer and fewer people are in the market to buy. With less houses, less people in, the prices remain pretty stable. Yes, we saw a little decrease in prices, mostly in the more expensive areas, but if you look here in Virginia, we didn't really move at all. Some of the houses are actually going back up. Some of my houses gained 10, 20 grand in equity just in a matter of a couple of months. So we have an inventory issue. It's not a financing issue, in my opinion. However, they kept on increasing rates. I don't know what they're trying to achieve. We'll see. Shelter increased 7.2% year over year, which I believe is mostly represented, especially in rents, which kept on increasing also in the past couple of months at a slower pace, but still increased. And 7.2% is a huge number. We're still 4 times higher almost than where we should be. So big issue. I believe that here the government has to step in with policy and building and incentivizing. Lastly, we're going to look at service sector, which goes well hand in hand with the job market. We saw a little improvement. The inflation rate on that is 5.7% compared to 5.9% we saw in the past month. So we see a slowdown in the inflation rate in the services sector. However, what this is basically saying is people are getting paid more for what they're doing, for the services they're doing, probably also as a consequence of still the very tight and strong labor market. The Fed has been fighting the labor market for a while, trying to slow it down, trying to even increase the unemployment rate, but even after the last jobs report, we're creating more jobs than before. We are beating expectations by a lot. So unless we stop that, unless we have people going really broke and wanting to keep the jobs they have, we're still going to have a high turnover ratio of people quitting, changing jobs, and negotiating higher salaries, pumping up the increase in wages too, potentially. And I believe that the Fed there on that side, I feel like they're starting to understand that there's little they can do. The only thing that we can do is shrinking the savings of the average American, shrinking consumption. Shrinking consumption will bring to a lower need of employment, which means more people getting laid off and that potentially increasing the unemployment rate. However, it's still not happening because the American is still showing pretty resilient, although not improving. And this is where we're gonna look at. There's a survey that I found from Clear Value Tax. I love him. I like a lot of his videos. I believe he has a more negative view of the situation, but to each their own. What he's basically stating that households expect a 3% increase in household income for this year, but also spending increase of 5.6%. So they're expecting to yes, have a higher salary, but also to be spending more than the increase in the salary, which means they're foreseeing that their real income will actually be dropping. If you know the theories of economics, you will know that in many cases, if expectation is very strong, that's what reality will become. But it depends, stuff can always change. We could see a gigantic recession and everything crumbling like we saw in 2008. I don't think that is the case, not financial advice, but I don't think that's the case. But here's what really got me from the video of Clear Value Tax. Critical statistic is that the average probability of missing a minimum debt payment over the next 3 months increased to 12.5%. This represents a 1.5% increase compared to what we saw in the past. And this is the highest reading since May of 2020. So pretty much since the pandemic started. More Americans are expressing concerns about the ability to pay bills on time. Now, what I would like to look at, if you do not mind. Now, I looked for a similar statistic for 2008, which I did not find. However, I was talking about pretty much all debts. If we look only at mortgages in 2008, we were talking about numbers between 5 and 22% of mortgage holders defaulted on their loans, which is huge if you think about it. Anyway, back onto the script here. November 1st is the next FOMC meeting where the Fed will decide what they will do with the interest rates. The expectation still is above 80% that the Fed will not raise interest rates. However, it dropped by a few percentage points. It went from 89% to 87%. The current rate is at 5.5%. The current average mortgage rate is around, 30-year mortgage rate is around the low 8s, high 7s, which is literally 2.5 times more than what we saw at the beginning of 2022. The future remains precarious. So we still have a very strong home ownership statistics. Yes, we saw more people thinking that they might not be able to pay a few debts. We saw the ratios increase, but it's not gigantic. If you look at past videos by other influencers, Clear Value Tax is one, PBD is another one. The average person in America is spending money out of their savings, but they still have some savings left for a few months. The question is, what will happen in the next few months? Now, if savings are all spent, the American will be forced to really spend less, which means drop in demand. Companies will make less. Companies might have to pivot, change something, fire people. We don't know that. Will be a gigantic economic recession? My opinion, no, because if you look at data such as debts, yes, debts are still pretty high, but the creditor is pretty resilient, specifically mortgages. The only side of the market where I'm going to have a little bit of concerns is the auto loans, where interest rates are very high compared to 2 years ago. Delinquencies always were very high. I worked in the automotive industry. I've seen people get approved that should not have been approved in the past. And I believe that if that is spread across 350 million Americans at a high enough ratio, that could be a little bit of a breaking. How big? I have no idea. We also know that some of the bigger companies that helped these dealers to give loans to, let's say, customers started to also stop serving their dealers like this. So I believe that that could be a little bit of a breaking point. How big is it? I have no idea. In terms of the overall economy, though, I believe that we will not see a housing crash. I believe that the worst in housing is probably now or just happened. I believe that once the Federal Reserve will understand that the most that the Federal Reserve policy could do has been done, will stop, maybe revert a little bit, or even just stabilize. Just a stabilization of the Fed saying we're stopping from here can improve the whole situation a lot, can make people think that there will be a pivot. And once that point comes, I believe that it's only up from there. I'm more optimistic about everything. I believe that the worst already happened. I might be wrong, but I am into real estate. I look at real estate data every day. I look at the amount of buyers. I look at how quickly homes get away in different markets, mostly Virginia, West Virginia, DC, Maryland, and I see that the market is still going at a slower pace, but it's still going. What can you do to improve your situation? This is very important. First of all, in a moment where interest rates are so high, if you can hoard cash, I believe that is the best thing to do. Save money, learn how to invest, because I believe that in the next couple of months, we will see a couple of very interesting opportunities. Even now, I am already investing in some things that I really like, stuff that is related to the expectation of interest rates stabilizing or even going back down. Number two, housing. Housing is very important. We know that we're not building enough. We know that buyers are scared. But at the same time, if you show up in this market, I believe that you can get a deal and you can negotiate with sellers much more. This is very important. I believe that if you wait too much, if the market improves and people start coming back onto the market, we're gonna live another 2021 and 2020 market frenzy with thousands of buyers and overbidding and overbidding. If you believe you can get ready to buy a house in the next 6 months, perhaps it's a good time to do some research, to save money, to start talking to brokers, understand what the numbers are, how to lower your interest rates, some good negotiation tactics to buy a house. The last house I sold, I negotiated that I would give a little bit of cash back to help out with closing costs. So you'll be surprised by how many different things you can do, even at a small cost of the seller, to get a better deal in terms of interest rates or down payments or closing costs and much more. So yeah, hoard cash, save money, be frugal, learn how to invest, because I believe that opportunities are coming up soon. Again, not financial advice, just my opinion. And guys, this is all. I believe that in today's world, while everybody's scared, you should get ready to counterattack and do a counteroffensive to improve your life. Thank you for watching. Ciao!